It started with something so small that most people would have ignored it completely. A single photo, quietly posted by Sam Heughan, showing a stretch of forest deep in the Scottish Highlands. The caption was simple, almost poetic, talking about silence, fresh air, and the feeling of being far away from everything. For Sam, this wasn't unusual. He had always shared his love for nature and the peaceful side of Scotland. But this time, someone noticed something different. Just days later, fans spotted a photo from Caitríona Balfe that seemed strangely familiar. It wasn't obvious at first. There was no direct mention of location, no clear landmark that screamed connection. But the trees, the lighting, even the angle of the path in the background looked almost identical to what Sam had posted. At first, it felt like coincidence. After all, Scotland is filled with forests that look similar, especially in photographs where details can easily blend together. But in a fandom that has spent years analyzing every possible connection between the two actors, even the smallest similarity was enough to raise questions. And once the question was asked, people started looking closer. Fans began going back through months, even years, of old posts, searching for patterns. They noticed that both Sam and Caitríona had periods where they seemed to disappear from public view at the same time. No events, no interviews, no clear updates about where they were. Just silence, followed by casual posts that gave nothing away. Individually, none of these details meant much. But together, they started to form something that felt intentional. Some fans pointed out that Sam has long spoken about having a quiet retreat somewhere in Scotland, a place where he can escape the noise of his career. He has described it as a space where he can disconnect, recharge, and simply exist without the constant presence of cameras and expectations. It sounded like a personal sanctuary, private, remote, and carefully protected. Then came the speculation. What if that place wasn't always as private as people assumed? As more comparisons surfaced, fans began highlighting subtle similarities between different posts. A wooden cabin appearing in the background of one image. A stone path that seemed to match another photo taken months apart. Even the way sunlight filtered through the trees looked eerily consistent across multiple images. None of it was definitive. But it was just enough to keep people digging. The theory began to evolve quickly. What started as curiosity turned into a much more intriguing possibility, that Sam and Caitríona may have shared time in the same secluded location, away from the public eye. Not as co-stars promoting a show, not as celebrities attending events, but simply as two people stepping outside of the world everyone else sees. For some fans, the idea felt almost cinematic. Two actors who spent years portraying one of television's most intense relationships, quietly retreating to a hidden corner of Scotland where no one was watching. A place where there were no scripts, no cameras, and no expectations, just silence and space. It sounded like something out of Outlander itself. But others approached the theory with more caution. They pointed out that both Sam and Caitríona have strong ties to Scotland, especially during filming periods. It would not be unusual for them to spend time in similar regions, particularly if they were working nearby or simply enjoying the landscape. Shared environments do not necessarily mean shared experiences. Still, the timing remained difficult to ignore. Several fans highlighted specific periods where both actors appeared to be in Scotland at the same time, despite not publicly acknowledging it. These overlaps, combined with the visual similarities in their posts, added another layer to the growing mystery. And then there was the tone of their captions. While neither of them ever mentioned each other directly, some fans believed there was a subtle emotional similarity in how they described those moments. Words like peace, quiet, escape, and home appeared more than once, creating the impression that both were experiencing something deeply personal during those times. Of course, none of this proved anything. There were no photos of them together in those locations, no confirmed sightings, no statements suggesting a shared experience. Everything rested on fragments, images, timing, atmosphere, pieces that could easily be coincidence or carefully interpreted through the lens of fan curiosity. But that is exactly what made the story so compelling. Because the more people looked, the more it felt like something was just out of reach. Not a clear answer, not a confirmed secret, but the outline of a possibility that refused to disappear. And in a world where nearly every aspect of celebrity life is documented and shared, the idea that something could remain hidden, quietly existing in the background, was enough to keep the conversation alive. As the theory gained momentum, what had started as a few curious observations quickly turned into a full-scale investigation across fan communities. Threads began appearing on forums where users meticulously compared images side by side, circling details, drawing lines, and building timelines that attempted to map out where Sam Heughan and Caitríona Balfe might have been at the same time. What once felt like coincidence was now being treated as a pattern waiting to be proven. Some fans took the analysis even further. They examined weather reports from specific dates, trying to match lighting conditions in photos to actual locations in Scotland. Others looked at travel schedules, filming breaks, and public appearances, attempting to identify gaps where both actors seemed to disappear simultaneously. The more these timelines overlapped, the stronger the theory began to feel, at least to those who believed something had been hidden. And then came the boldest version of the speculation. A growing number of fans suggested that this wasn't just about occasional visits to the same place. They believed it pointed to something more deliberate, a private space, possibly even a shared retreat, where both Sam and Caitríona could step away from the public lives. A place untouched by paparazzi, where no one was watching, and nothing needed to be explained. To some, it sounded almost too perfect. Two actors known for their intense on-screen connection, choosing to escape to a quiet corner of Scotland, away from the pressure of fame. The idea blurred the line between fiction and reality in a way that felt both romantic and mysterious. It was the kind of story that fans wanted to believe, even if there was no clear proof. But not everyone agreed. A large part of the community pushed back strongly against these conclusions. They argued that the evidence was built entirely on interpretation, that similar landscapes, overlapping timelines, and vague captions were not enough to support such a significant claim. Scotland's scenery is vast and often looks similar, especially in carefully framed photos. They also pointed to an important reality. Caitríona Balfe has always maintained clear boundaries around her personal life, and she has openly spoken about her marriage and her commitment to keeping that part of her world private. For many fans, this made the idea of a hidden shared life not only unlikely, but also unfair to assume based on speculation alone. That tension created a divide. On one side were those who saw the theory as a fascinating possibility, a hidden chapter that no one had noticed before. On the other were those who viewed it as a reminder of how easily curiosity can turn into overinterpretation. And between those two perspectives, the conversation continued to grow. What made it even more intriguing was the complete silence from both Sam and Caitríona. Neither of them addressed the speculation. There were no denials, no clarifications, and no attempts to shut down the conversation. And as often happens, that silence only fueled further discussion. Some saw it as confirmation that there was nothing to address, while others interpreted it as a deliberate choice to keep something private. In the end, the truth remained out of reach. There was no definitive answer, no moment where everything became clear. Just fragments of possibility, shaped by perspective and imagination. And perhaps that is why the story refused to fade. Because somewhere between what was seen and what was assumed, a question continued to linger. Was it all just coincidence, or was there a part of their story that had quietly existed beyond what anyone was meant to see? There was no definitive answer, no moment where everything became clear. Just fragments of possibility, shaped by perspective and imagination. And perhaps that is why the story refused to fade. Especially when that something seemed to lead back to a place as remote and mysterious as the Scottish woods.